I think we probably all expected this sort of stat. South African drivers are among the worst in the world. It's not just me saying it. There's a study that's been done. It's by Compare the Market over in Australia. The car insurance platform has found that we have the most fatal accidents, about 44.8 accidents per 100,000 people. It's staggeringly high. How high? 7 times that of the United Kingdom. They have the safest drivers, according to the study. Well, let's bring in MasterDrive CEO Eugene Herbert, making time for me this morning. Eugene, hello to you. Surprised by the findings? What do you make of it?
Morning, Gareth, and to listeners. Really not surprised at all. And if I can just give you some background. You know, we've watched these statistics over the years, and despite the best efforts of law enforcement authorities over the challenging times, such as long weekends, the fatalities continue to grow. But if I can just talk to what the cause is in many instances, in our opinion, is a combination of things. One, the drivers that will be entering the market are ill-experienced. They've probably, in many instances, got their license by fraudulent means. And as a result, the driver that you put on the road, who sees that piece of paper that he gets as a right to drive, instead of it being a responsibility, is responsible for many of the crashes and fatalities that we have on the world, on our roads in South Africa. Combine that with the fact that, and I'm not exactly sure of the statistics, but it's probably in the region of 50–60% of those fatalities are pedestrians. That's because we have the number of people who don't have cars, who walk on the side of the road, dressed in the clothing which they cannot be seen, and as a result we have that number of fatalities with pedestrians as well.
Where does speeding come into the thinking here as well? Because every holiday, whether it's the July holidays, especially December holidays, Eugene, I'm sure you and I have spoken during those times, the number of high-speed incidents, not just on highways, but also side roads as well, is a major contributing factor. I still don't understand how cars that come into our country from overseas or are bought off the floor are allowed to even do 250 k's an hour. I think they should be governed to 120, the national speed limit, but here we are. Well, how big an issue is speed?
I think it is one of the contributory factors, but if I can go to something that is even more critical, those self-same cars, and in principle, speed is not actually what is the cause of the fatality. It's the inappropriate use of speed in an area which is not designed to accommodate vehicles that are capable of that speed. Combine that with other vehicles which are unroadworthy, and you and I know the fact that you are able to buy a roadworthy certificate for a vehicle that doesn't even exist. So if a number of those vehicles on the road are engaging with other vehicles that are quite capable of traveling at higher speeds, and I'm not for a moment condoning that they should, because irresponsible use of speed is really negligent, reckless, and it should be condemned in the strongest possible terms. But having said that, I believe that the South African driver's appetite for risk is broken down into two areas. If you don't know better, you may not be guilty of something, but if you know, for example, the use of mobile phones while driving, we know it contributes toward 25% of crashes around the world, and yet if we still continue to do so, it indicates arrogance on our side. If we think about people who drive unroadworthy vehicles at high speeds, it is going to cause a crash. So that arrogance is typified in many of the drivers. But having said that, there are provisions by law enforcement to be able to take those vehicles off the road. And yet the proverbial lunch money to the traffic officer on the side of the road will ensure that you still stay on the road. So that's one of the things that we have to have a higher value system, a system that says we drive the right way because it's the right thing to do.
And I was about to say, you took the words out of my mouth. It should be a case of drivers around the world in South Africa should just be more responsible. The problem is, though, you almost get a sense right now that it's a carrot or a stick situation. The carrot isn't working. So do we need to get tougher with the stick? The question we're asking our viewers this morning, Eugene, and they can go vote for it on our website, by the way, eNCA.com. It's this on the website. If police and courts took a tougher stance on bad driving, would our roads be safer? Is this a legislation and a legal solution to your mind?
We have got legislation in place, Gareth. It's the application of that legislation that would ensure that we make a difference. But if you and I as a driver are driving down the road, driving an unroadworthy car, a license that's fraudulent, and we know that the likelihood of us being penalized or been taken to court and as a result been sentenced because that person on the side of the road is highly susceptible to a bribe. What is our attitude? So it's really a lot to do with our attitude as to whether we tolerate, condone, and I'm quite sure we've seen it on the roads. Some people who are very respectable will think nothing of offering the traffic officer a bribe to get out of a speeding fine or something like that. So the whole mentality, and the article there made reference, excuse me, to the UN mandate of to reduce fatalities by 50% by the year 2030 at the end of this mandate. It's all very well having that as something that we aspire to, but if we don't show the desire to make a difference, and one of the things that we do, we work with a phenomenal number of people who do have a desire. So it's good news, and let's maybe kind of finish that as one of the points, is that there are people who want to make a difference and who do make a difference. And if we can align ourselves with those value systems and see driving as a responsibility and as a privilege rather than a right, then I'm quite sure we can make some difference.
I'm afraid I am going to have to leave this as a last question. I didn't want to go into the battle of the sexes, but the report also, Eugene, feel free to weigh in on this one at your own peril. South African men account for more fatal accidents than women. Last question to you briefly. I'm going to let you possibly hang yourself on this one. What do you make of that?
Can I offer the contents in the context? When we train drivers, women are far more receptive to the fact that they don't know everything, whereas men think they know everything. And that's probably one of the reasons why there's more fatalities amongst men. And yes, I know it's opening myself, women generally tend to be better, more responsible drivers.